I was a little bit like a hamster on a wheel. Like I was exercising to eat, eating to exercise. It just led me to getting sick. But I remember I would wake up in the morning and I'd be like, I need to burn the calories before I have breakfast.
So my guest today is Madeleine Karlsson, aka Maddy. So most of you call you like that. You're an integrative nutrition and health coach, Pilates teacher, yoga and meditation instructor, and you have over 15 years experience in the wellness industry. And I'm so honored to have you here today, and it would be lovely if you could start off with giving us a short background story about yourself.
I am from Sweden. I live in beautiful Costa Rica. I have always had a really keen interest in health, nutrition, fitness, just because I realized that the better I felt in my body, the better life I could live. And so, even though I hadn't really started off working in this industry, I was working in a completely different industry in politics and then in real estate. Somehow, I kept coming back to this work, and I realized one day that I had a powerful impact on the people around me when it came to empowering them to take charge of their health and their wellness. And so that's kind of how I ended up doing this work. So I think it's definitely kind of my mission and what I'm meant to be doing here, but it wasn't really what I'd planned initially.
Well, you definitely did a good choice in moving to Costa Rica. And for those who are not familiar with your work, can you give us like a 30-second introduction into your specializations?
Okay, so I have a business called Fit Body Fresh Mind. Fit Body Fresh Mind is all about empowering people to look after themselves from a place of love. I realized when I was on my own journey that there was a lot of negative talk around food and fitness, a lot of guilt, a lot of no pain, no gain, and so on. And I realized that what our inner dialogue is as important when it comes to our health as anything else. And so I wanted to empower people to take charge of their health in a way that's loving and kind on themselves. And so I combine food, obviously, as a nutrition coach. I combine fitness with Pilates and yoga, really mindful ways of moving with mindfulness. And that is Fit Body Fresh Mind. So really empowering people through different programs, one-on-one coaching. I have also a membership with a whole bunch of workouts that I film a little bit all over the place, mainly in Costa Rica. And I host retreats as well.
Amazing. And like you mentioned, you teach Pilates, yoga, and what you also call mindful movement. What are the benefits of these practices and how do they differ from other forms of exercise?
It's really about connecting back to our bodies and learning how to work our bodies, getting to know our bodies. I think that a lot of us can feel disconnected from our bodies. And so by practicing these forms of movement, we become more acquainted with our own bodies and we understand our needs better. What I realized working as a Pilates teacher was that my clients started talking to me about how suddenly they felt more inclined to look after themselves better because they were suddenly connecting back to their bodies from a place of love. And I think that that is so important because a lot of the times we do fitness and we're like, I need to do another this or I need to do that because I had this earlier or I had this cookie and blah, blah, blah. It's a way of working against the body. And I'm all about helping people learn how to work with their bodies because at the end of the day, our bodies want to be our friends. Our bodies want to be healthy. And so we need to learn how to work with our bodies, to listen to our body's needs and to look after them and to get fit in a way that is kind and gentle, but that doesn't mean that we can't challenge ourselves, right? Some of my Pilates classes are really challenging, but I always say to people, listen to your body, work with your body, accept where your body's at each day because that can change from one day to another. So it's really about meeting the body where it's at and looking after the body from a place of love.
There is such a lack of awareness in this space and really getting in tune with ourselves rather than doing what we think is good and not doing what we actually feel is good. I think that's really powerful. And like you said, your offerings are extremely multifaceted. From your coaching, online program, your retreats, they're all grounded in like mindful movement, functional nutrition, and mindfulness. What inspired this holistic approach, and how does it differ from much of what's available in the wellness industry?
What inspired it was my own struggles. When I was in my late teens and my early 20s, I was very much on the journey of like beating myself up with exercising as much as I possibly could. I was running 10 kilometers a day. And so I was clocking up and I was doing that 7 days a week. Then I was going to the gym and then I was depriving myself from food, counting calories and so on. And I thought that was healthy and I thought that was being fit. And people looked at me and they're like, oh my God, you're so disciplined. You're doing all these things. But internally, I felt horrible. And eventually that caught up with me and I ended up getting injured. I ended up getting sick. I ended up developing a gut disease. And I was like, I couldn't believe it because I thought, wow, like I'm like healthy and I'm following all the recommendations when it comes to fitness and health and so on. And at the time I'd put on a little bit of weight, but nothing like super major, but it was really bothering me because I was just like, wow, here I am working out really hard, going to the gym every morning at 5:30 in the morning, like being super mindful of what I'm eating, and I'm feeling terrible, and now I'm sick and injured. Like, this is ridiculous. And so it was my own journeys trying to understand, like, what was I doing wrong and what did I need to do differently. I was a little bit like a hamster on a wheel. Like, I was exercising to eat, eating to exercise, and then eventually it just led me to getting sick and injured. And so it was really my own journey that inspired this new way of thinking.
You know what? That listening to your story, it sounds exactly like what I did. So we definitely have to get we have to talk more in detail after this interview because
Yeah.
I might need your help as well. So why do you think that this mainstream approach to maintaining a healthy body weight is so wrong?
Body weight already is like one of those words. It's just like, what is a healthy body weight, right? We have like the BMI, which to me is like, that means nothing, because you can be someone who's got a lot of muscles and that has a high BMI and is in good health. And then you can have someone who's got a low BMI. They're not looking after themselves well. They're not eating well. They're not exercising and so on. So a healthy weight is already something where I'm like, wow, okay, that's, and then the whole concept of calories in, calories out, like I think that's kind of what led us down this rabbit hole, because we've all been told that in order to maintain a healthy weight, we need to spend as many calories as we consume. And in order to lose weight, we need to burn more calories than what we eat. And that has kind of turned food into the enemy. And food shouldn't be the enemy, right? Because food is essential for our well being. It's as if you said, oh, well, I'm going to give my car as little fuel as possible to see how that works. It's like, yeah, it's not going to work. So I think that that whole equation and that whole concept of an ideal body weight, an ideal body figure, and the concept of calories in, calories out is what led us down this path that is highly detrimental to our physical health, but especially to our mental health.
I love the metaphor that you just said with the car because really, I think one of the biggest struggles of all people is like this calorie thing. It's like people are always like, they freak out about calories. They have so much fear about calories
Mm-hmm.
that even stresses their body so much. So, why do you think it's so wrong to fear calories? And how can we shift this mindset?
It's wrong because there are certain foods that have a lot of nutrients. Like if you look at an avocado, for example, it's got a lot of healthy fats and it's a very natural food. And you compare it to like a diet bar. Well, maybe the diet bar has got less calories, but it's definitely not going to be as good for you as the avocado, right? One of the examples I like to use as well, if you give a kid a picture of a big glass of broccoli and then you show it like a candy bar that's got like 100 calories, like you ask the kid which one's better for you, even though there's 100 calories in both, the kid is going to be like, well, the broccoli is healthier. But as adults, we're led to believe like, oh, 100 calories is 100 calories. But how do those 100 calories impact you? How do they impact your digestive health? How do they impact your blood sugar levels? Are they bringing you nutrients? Are they actually natural? Are you actually designed to eat that? Or is it stuff that has been man-made and sold to you under a nice packaging, pretending to be better for you than anything that you'd find in nature?
That's one of the biggest shifts that has to happen in this space. Like you mentioned before, this like obsession with food and also this wrong feeling towards food, having food as your enemy, has been causing a lot of mental health struggles. So, how do you see a correlation between this mental health and maintaining a healthy body weight?
There's a lot to be said around that. I think one of the biggest misconceptions already that I want to address head on is this misconception that I will be happy when I'll have reached a certain weight, right? A lot of I'm guessing men have this too. I happen to work more with women, but a lot of women say like, "Oh, I just need to lose those 2 or 3 more pounds and then I'll like myself and or then I'll be happy." And that's just simply not true because we can have a really nice figure and still not be happy. Like I've spoken to women who have beautiful figures or modeling and everything, and they're still not happy about their weight or the way they look. And equally, I've spoken to women who might be a little bit more on the, higher weight side, and they're super happy within their figure. Mental health is something that we need to prioritize no matter how we look, and we can't tie our mental health to our physical health. And this is very hard, or our physical appearance. And that is very hard, right? It's much easier said than done. Being able to love yourself no matter how you look and how much you weigh is a big task, especially for us women, but I'm sure the same struggles could be true for men. A lot of the work needs to focus on like loving ourselves no matter how we look on the outside. And from
Mm.
there, start looking after ourselves because we love ourselves. I'm going to choose to have the blueberries instead of the chocolate or whatever the chemical dessert that I've presented here, because I love myself and I want to give myself the best possible fuel. And that's what I've seen in my work is like the moment that shift happens, the moment I can facilitate that shift and I can help people to step into like more a place of self-love and to start making healthier choices from a place of love and not because they hate themselves just because of the weight on the scale, that's where the true work can begin. And that's where we can like really see true transformation.
Like you said, I think that's such a big part of it, is that that's where the shift happens, where you don't no longer see food as your enemy, right? It's more as your friend. Like, what do I want to put inside of me, and what is like the turnaround effect as well? Because putting blueberries inside of me will make me stay energized, let me feel good, and as soon as I put something chemical inside of me, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I feel like my body is exploded. So really seeing that correlation between food and how you feel is so important. And one of your specialities, and also what you talked about in your TEDx talk, is about emotional eating and the concept of primary food.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about this concept?
So the concept of primary food is something that I learned about when I studied at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. It's something that I've really carried with me in my work because it was extremely helpful to me. And I think to share a little bit more about my personal story, like I think one of the reasons that I managed to change my whole life and move to Costa Rica and set up a business that I love and so on was because I started focusing more on my primary food. I stopped being obsessed about what I was putting on my plate and I thought, how can I seek fulfillment in my life within the areas of my life that truly matter to me? So, primary foods are all the things outside of the food on your plate that bring you joy and that make you feel fulfilled and that are important to you. And some of those things can be your career, right? If you're sitting all day in a job that you hate with a boss that's not nice to you, chances are you're going to come home and you're going to binge eat. And that's not because you have you don't have any discipline or you don't know that you shouldn't be binge eating. That's because that area of your life is out of balance. And so instead of beating yourself up for binge eating, maybe you should start thinking about changing jobs. And that is the whole concept of primary food. So really looking at food, like when we have a poor relationship with food, it's often a reflection of a disbalance in terms of our primary foods. And other areas of our primary food could be creativity. If you're an extremely creative person, but you're not taking time to tap into that creativity and enjoy that side of your personality and be creative, then that might have negative effects on you. Or tapping into that again will help you, find better balance with food, because I think that food is so available and it's such a social thing as well that even a lot of the clients I work with, it's just like, yeah, but coming home and cooking myself a nice meal and sitting down in front of the TV is like, it's what brings so much joy. And it's just like, it's great that it brings you joy, but you need to learn how to find joy elsewhere in your life. And that is what primary food is all about. And really looking at our relationship with food as a reflection of the life that we're living and the relationship that we have with ourselves. I always say that the relationship we have with food is a reflection of the relationship we have with ourselves. And so this work is really about bringing it back to ourselves, about the choices we're making, the boundaries we're setting with people, etc., etc., because all of that has an impact on our relationship with food.
I can just reflect it for myself. I always saw a reflection of how I faced food and how happy I was in my life overall. So it's very true. And I think then again, awareness is a big part that plays with it. And one thing I also used to do a lot, and that you mentioned at the beginning, is that you were working out to eat and you were eating to exercise. And I feel like it's an obsession that a lot of people get into. And obviously, it's mentally draining and it doesn't have the effect on the body that we hope to achieve. How would you say your approach is now different?
So already I've reframed my relationship with exercise. So for me, exercise used to be a way to burn calories. It used to be a way to make sure that I didn't put on weight, or if I had put on weight, it was my way of trying to lose weight. And so my whole relationship with exercise has changed. And now I exercise to feel good in my body. I exercise to be strong. I exercise because it brings me joy. I exercise if I feel stuck in my body, or if I feel stuck mentally, I exercise to open up my body, to create an internal shift in how I feel energetically energetically. Like I found so many different reasons to exercise that are completely unrelated to my weight or my appearance. And that was the most transformative thing that I could do, because I think that as long as we tie exercise to weight loss or weight management, then we have this thing and we think about calories and so on, then we're trapped in this hamster wheel, right? Because we're like, okay, I'm going to eat now. And this is going to sound crazy. Some people have never experienced it, but I remember I would wake up in the morning and I'd be like, I need to burn the calories before I have breakfast so that I can earn my breakfast. And then I'd really burn a lot. Like I'd go to the gym and I'd work out like crazy, and then I'd come home and I'd be starving. And then I'd overeat because I would have completely depleted myself in the gym. And so then I would overeat, then I'd start feeling guilty, and then I'd be like, okay, well, what do I do now? And then I'd go and do another workout, and then I'd do the same thing again. And then I'd be like, but this is crazy. I couldn't go on holiday without knowing that I was going to go and stay somewhere where there was a gym, because I needed to be sure that I was going to be able to burn calories. And it was just like, I was definitely not any fitter back then. I wasn't any leaner either. So it just goes to show that that's a massive misconception. And I think the other thing is like addressing our relationship with food and what we eat is a lot harder than just telling yourself that you're going to go and exercise a little bit more, right? Because
Yeah.
food, we have such an emotional relationship with food, and we have our habits and we have our traditions, and there's a lot of social pressures around food. Like changing what you eat, like it's not easy. But if you stop spending so much time and energy on exercising, and that you start really focusing on food, which is what I had to do when I was diagnosed with IBS and Candida in 2009. It was for medical reasons. Like I had to learn how to eat healthy. And when I did that, I was just like, I don't need to spend all those hours burning calories. I just need to learn how to eat properly. And then I started feeling much better in my body. And that's eventually what broke the cycle. And I think that that's kind of the way out.
And how would you define a healthy lifestyle?
A healthy lifestyle to me is listening to our bodies, simply. Also recognizing that it's not just the physical health, right? It's the mental health, it's the emotional health, it's our spiritual health, it's our social health, it's our energetic body. Everything is connected. And so a healthy lifestyle is about honoring our body's needs. And sometimes a healthy lifestyle is realizing that you're tired and giving yourself some rest. And sometimes a healthy lifestyle is going and doing a really fun, energetic workouts because you feel like you have the energy and you want to challenge yourself. So to me, it's really about listening to the body, especially also when it comes to food, honoring yourself with good food when you're hungry, learning to recognize true hunger, because that's another thing that a lot of people are disconnected from their true hunger. They feel like they're hungry all the time because either they're eating foods that make them hungry instead of eating foods that make them feel satiated, or their way of dealing with their emotions is tied to food. And so they feel stressed and they're like, I'm hungry. It's just like, no, you're just stressed. Or they feel sad, or they feel like there's a void in them. And so instead of sitting with that void and learning what that void is trying to tell them, they're like, I'm just going to eat because I'm hungry. And it's just like, no, we need to learn what is true hunger and work with that. And it's really, yeah, about reconnecting with our bodies and learning to work with our bodies in all different facets.
And you just said that a lot of people use food to numb stress. How do you approach stress, or when a stressful day happens or things cross your path that you feel like you can't deal with in that moment?
So I think stress is unavoidable, right? In our society, like we are subject to stress. One of the things that I learned a few years ago is that, you can't control what's going on around you. You can't always control that. What you can control is your response to it. So I'm someone who is by nature very short fuse. Like if I get triggered, like I react very quickly. And so having a mindfulness practice, meditating, and doing breath work and so on has helped me develop a little bit more space between the trigger and when I react. And so, what I've realized now with time, as I've become consistent with those practices, and also with Pilates and yoga and tuning in with my body and finding stillness in my body every day, I think that's really important to find stillness. A lot of us live at such high pace that we don't even know what it feels like, and we want to avoid the stillness and just being, right? So, learning to kind of befriend that place and being able to reconnect with it in moments of stress and going like, okay, so shit has hit the fan, excuse my language, like, but I can still choose to be calm in this moment. And it's easier said than done, right? But then also realizing that, like, yes, some situations in life are 100% super stressful, and we have all the rights to get it, upset and so on about it. But then there's a lot of stuff that's like, you know, things happen and you just need to be able to be like, don't sweat the small stuff, basically.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
exactly.
some. But again, it's easier said than done. And I think that I am definitely the kind of person who gets like really annoyed really quickly. And so I really need my mindfulness practice. Like I need my yoga, I need my breath work, because otherwise I go like I get really triggered really easily. But I mean, if I manage to make the changes, like I'd say anything, anyone can.
You use your meditation, your mindfulness practice to help you overcome these situations. How would you say that also the right movement can help us overcome this, especially in today's epidemic of stress that we have?
So I used to practice a lot of Ashtanga. I don't know if it's a yoga practice that you're familiar
Yes.
with, but I spent, yeah, exactly. So I spent many years being really consistent with my Ashtanga practice. I trained to be an Ashtanga teacher, and it's a practice that I often come back to. And one of the things that what my teacher one day said to me, and it just clicked, and I was like, wow. And it was like, yoga is about finding comfort in the uncomfortable. And, and I was like, wow, sometimes when you're in those Ashtanga poses, you're like,
You just
can I, exactly, you can barely breathe. It's like, you can breathe. You can breathe and you can, and the more you relax and the more you surrender in those moments, the more you realize, like, actually, I can do it, right? And so that's like for me, Ashtanga and sitting in those really uncomfortable like places and learning to breathe in those uncomfortable places. I'm just like, wow. And then what I've
yeah,
learned on the mat, not taking it off the mat. It's like you can still breathe here, you can still be present here, you can still surrender here, even if it's uncomfortable. And I think as humans, we want to avoid uncomfortable situations. We want to avoid like anything that's like a little bit challenging. But then I think that that's kind of bypassing in a way. Like we need to learn how to be with the uncomfortable. And
yeah,
sometimes we learn that on a yoga mat, right? And then just learning to breathe. I find that the breath is such a powerful tool. It's free, it costs nothing, it's always there, and we never think of using it. So just taking a deep breath in through your nose and then a deep breath out through your mouth, like wow. And learning to do that on our mats, like I do that a lot in my classes, especially in Pilates, like deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. And then once people learn how to do that every day in their practice, they start using it in their day-to-day life.
yeah. No, I think breathwork is completely underestimated. I'm
Hmm.
so glad and happy to see that there's actually a shift happening right now where I feel like people are more about like going to breathwork classes and like trying these things and actually seeing what it can do to your body, because I am so fascinated every time I do like a proper breathwork session where it's like maybe 20 minutes, what it does to me. My heart rate goes like so much down. I get so much more relaxed. I get so much more focused. Everything that happens throughout the day I can tackle so much better, like all the stressors that come at me. So I think breathwork is such a powerful tool. And like you said, in Ashtanga, it's like one of the biggest learnings is that as soon as you focus on your breath, you get aware of your breath, suddenly everything feels so much easier. It was actually one of the biggest learnings for me as well, practicing so much Ashtanga. It's like now I always know, like you do, that just take a deep breath and then look at it again, and it changes a lot. It really changes a lot. For a lot of people, when life kicks in, it can sometimes be really hard to remember these tools and also to be more conscious and aware of eating and their eating habits. So, do you have any tips for those people or for people in general of how they can remind themselves on day-to-day basis and in daily situations?
Slowing down is like my number one tip. I think that we operate on autopilot. And so a lot of people wake up, they don't even ask themselves if they're hungry. They go into the coffee shop, they buy a coffee and a donut or whatever. Like they don't even stop to ask themselves, what am I doing? Am I hungry? What am I putting inside of my body? And that's one of the reasons for that is because we live at such high-paced lives, right? Not all of us do, but a lot of people live really high-paced lives. And so slowing down, taking a step back and really asking yourself, like, is consuming this really going to help me with the outcome that I'm hoping to have, and if that's, having more energy, feeling better for mentally, physically, emotionally, then really just asking yourself that question in that moment. But it is hard. I'm not going to lie. So slowing down, and I think the slowing down, um, for me, the most efficient practice, because I'm also someone who's like go 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 go, and I think one of the reasons I was led to this work was because I was a go, 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 go all the time. I never stopped and asked myself what I was doing. I was just like, I'm just going to burn more calories and then I'm going to deprive myself from food and then I'm going to be super fit and healthy, except that never happened. And so I think I was given this gift to realize like there is another way of doing it. And so for me, the most powerful tool has been meditation and breath work, because that's how we can slow down and tune in with ourselves. And that's how we create that space. So even though we're trying to change our relationship with food and we're changing what we're eating, we need to start a little bit further back than that. And we need to start by becoming mindful, because mindfulness is the tool. If we're mindful, we can make better choices and we stop operating on autopilot.
Yeah. But do you still sometimes have or crave comfort food?
Of course, yeah, of course. I think that that's also having a healthy relationship with food, right? It's about understanding that sometimes it's okay to have, ice cream or whatever it is that you want. I don't think that healthy eating needs to be exclusively eating like all only healthy stuff, because sometimes it's perfectly healthy to, if you go or if you're with people, you're going to a party or something like that, and someone serves you something and you're like, that looks delicious, I really want to try it. Like, I would say that that's a healthy relationship with food. And I think that the intention we have behind why we eat something is more important than what we're actually eating. And so if I am like, if there's a piece of cake there and I'm like, I'm going to eat it, but I'm going to feel super guilty and horrible, like that's not good for my health, right? But if I
Yeah.
have the mental space to be like, oh no, I can have a little bit of that, that's fine, then that's different, because we also know that stress in our mental state has a massive impact on how we digest our food and what the food does to us. So it's really important to have a good relationship with food and to allow ourselves sometimes to indulge in the finer things in life, and to not feel guilty for it.
Yeah. I think that's important for people to understand that a healthy lifestyle doesn't mean only vegetables. It's like only greens. It's like I think that that's what people are a lot of times afraid of. They're like, I can only go either or. And
Yes.
it's not. You can have both, but you have to understand that exactly. And I think that what you said, what I really loved, and I just wrote it down, is that the intention why you eat something is more important than what you eat. And and in so many ways that's so key, because I truly believe that your intention interacts with your body. The way your body digests it and takes it on is how you think about the food. If you eat something and you just think about, oh my god, I'm going to punish myself tomorrow because I have to exercise so much because I'm just eating this, then obviously the food will go to areas that you won't want, you don't want them to go to. But I think if you go with the right intention, you're in a beautiful environment, you're with someone you love, you're having, like, for example, me here, I love cheese fondue. And we're in Switzerland skiing and like having a cheese fondue, it's just like this one thing I crave so much, sitting there with my partner, having a nice glass of wine, having cheese fondue. Obviously it's probably the most caloric thing I could have, but like the act of doing it is so filled with joy and so much filled with like interaction and love and like just like this comfort that I can digest it sometimes better than any vegetable I eat. So I really think that it's like you said, it's so important that people understand that being healthy is having a healthy relationship with food, and sitting down, taking a breath and being like, why am I eating this right now? And if it's because it brings me so much joy, then it's the right thing. It's not eating and not realizing what you're eating. I think that's the worst, when people are in front of the TV or working and they're just like putting things in their mouth and they're not aware of what they're eating. That's where the unhealthy relationship with food happens.
It's a mindless eating, right? Like instead of mindful eating, there's a mindless eating where people,
Yeah.
and then the other thing that I would say is, if you have that approach that you have right now, like, I'm doing it because it brings me joy and it's such a special moment, then chances are you're not going to overdo it. The thing is, like, if we go in at it with guilt, chances are we're going to be like, well, I had half the pack of chocolates or biscuits, I might as well have all of it because I've already ruined it. And that's when whereas if you give yourself the, like, you're like, I this is great. Like, I enjoy this. Like, this is
Yeah.
fantastic. It makes me happy. It brings me joy. I'm, sharing this special moment with my partner and so on. Then you're not going to go home and like, feel guilty or do something else just because you ruined it. It's like, no, you haven't ruined anything.
Yeah.
You're being a
Yeah.
human. Having a social interaction, a loving social interaction. Fantastic.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your personal wellness routine? What is really
Uh,
essential for you?
okay, so I'm a massive believer that sleep is really important for our
Yeah.
health and our well-being, physical, mental health. Yeah. So I try to get 8 hours of sleep in at least a night. Sometimes I sleep 9 to 10 hours. I go to bed pretty early. I find that that's pretty common here in Costa Rica. So I try to stay in line with like when the sun goes down, I go kind of start getting ready to go to bed, and then when the sun rises, so kind of getting in line with that circadian rhythm and with nature. And then I wake up in the morning. I always have a big glass of water. Right now, I'm doing chlorophyll water. Um, and then I generally do some breath work or some meditation.
Hmm.
And then, depending on my day, I'll either go off and have client calls, or if I have time, then I'll do a 20-minute workout on my own, or sometimes I'll go off and teach a class here in Costa Rica. Or sometimes I'll go and ride my horse. I have a horse here, or sometimes I'll go and surf. But horse riding is something that I've enjoyed. I started riding when I was 3 years old, and it's a sport I actually stopped because I became so obsessed with burning calories, and I thought that horse riding didn't burn enough calories. Can you believe it's like it's so stupid? I feel so stupid even sharing this, but it just goes to show how crazy we are when it comes to these things. Like, look, I'm tearing up. I'm just like, I can't believe I was that silly. But it was like horses for me, and horse riding, like, it brings me so much joy. And of course, it wasn't the only reason I gave it up. There are many other reasons why I gave up horse riding, but one of the main reasons why, well, not the main reason, but one of the reasons I gave it up was because I was like, I need to go to the gym. I need to go and break calories. I don't have time, like blah, 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 blah. And now, like getting on my horse and horse riding is just like, wow, like it fills my cup in a really beautiful way, especially around here. And then sometimes I'll go surfing, and sometimes I'll go and take a yoga class. But what I've really changed is I don't have a set routine besides like getting enough sleep, drinking water, and doing some form of mindfulness practice. So either meditation or breath work. Those are the three things that remain the same. But then I'm giving myself full freedom depending on my mood and depending on the day and so on to do anything else that day. And then some days I'll wake up and I'll be like, I feel tired today. I'm just going to give myself some rest, and I'm going to focus on my work and so on, but not do any physical practices. And that was something that was impossible. Like that was inconceivable for me in the past, to be like, I'm not going to exercise, and to not have a plan as well. Like I felt like I needed to have a plan. Like on Monday, I'm going to do this. On Tuesday, I need to do this. On Wednesday, and now I'm like, oh, you can do whatever you want, depending on how you feel. And it's so interesting because my body has responded so much better, and my mental health and my emotional health as well.
Yeah, I can definitely still learn a lot from you. But one thing we talk a lot about is the how in wellness. So, how do we build a healthy habit? How to eat? How to exercise? But I think what we often really forget is the focus on the why. Can you tell us a little bit more about your why and why you dedicated your life to this work?
So, my personal why is because I realize that when I feel good from within, everything in my life becomes so much better. And
Yeah.
in order to make the most out of life, to squeeze all the juice out of life, I need to feel good. And when I realized that I had the power to change how I felt within through my practices and so on, I was like, and through how I eat, that was a big transformation for me. I realized that I wanted to share that with others because I want people to realize how much power they have over their lives by addressing how they feel within, like, and how they feed themselves, how they look after themselves, how they move, how they think. Like, all that has a massive impact on our health. And then it can allow us to live happier lives. And that's what we're here for. We're here to be joyful and to make the most out of life.
Because you just said it, what is your meaning of joy?
So my meaning of joy is it comes from within, and it's when I'm in full alignment with who I truly am,
Mm.
and when I'm in a situation or surrounded by people who share my values. And I think a lot of the times for me, it's being in nature and being with animals. Those are things that bring me joy. Sometimes just watching a sunset or having a conversation like this brings me a lot of joy.
And is there like a daily practice that you think everyone should be adopting so they could live their life to the fullest?
I really believe in mindfulness. So either, meditation or breath work or something like that. I think it's time that we all start prioritizing better mental health and understanding the link between our mental health and our physical health.
And as you might know, at the Healing Company, we really strongly believe in like an increased focus on prevention rather than treatment. What's your view on like the overall wellness and healing industry? And why do you think that's important that this shift is going to happen?
Well, my hope is that it's one day going to take over the medical industry, that we're going to be more focused on prevention rather than on, yeah, than on fixing people once they're broken. Like that's my hope, right? I
Yeah.
think it's fantastic. I'm super excited to see what you guys are doing, and I think that that's really the way forward. And I think that there's a shift happening in people's consciousness right now, and that people are ready to receive those kind of messages. At the end of the day, our health is our responsibility, and it's not because you're not sick that you can call yourself healthy. Like you need to be proactive in your health. Like there's things that you need to do every day to look after your body. You wouldn't
Yeah.
expect your car to be okay if you never took it into the shop, never changed the oil, never did all those things that are important for it, right? So it's time that we take the same approach towards our health.
And I just started an Ayurvedic course, and it's exactly what you just said. Health is not. You really have to be proactive because you're not only healthy when you're not sick. So it's
Yeah.
such a wrong thinking and mindset, and that we definitely have to become more proactive, more aware of our bodies in so many ways. So why do you think it's so imperative to bring integrated healing to the world?
I think we have an epidemic. People are not feeling good in their bodies and their minds, and I think it's only going to get worse. And I think that there needs to be a collective effort and also an individual effort. Everyone needs to wake up to the fact that they have power over their health and to choose better things when it comes to food and to do things like mindfulness. So I think that's imperative. I think it's important. And I think that one of the things that, is interesting is like when we're not feeling good, when we look at the bigger picture of what that looks like as a civilization and on our leaders and what we do to the world, like it's very destructive. Like we need to look after ourselves better so that we can look after each other better and so that we can look after our planet better.
Yeah, we can only be as good to the outside as we are to the inside, right?
Mhm.
So, and coming over to your personal inspiration, who do you learn from and who do you see achieving breakthroughs in healing?
I'm very inspired right now by Gabor Mate's work. I
Mm,
am
same.
I've just
Love him.
enrolled in his course and I'm reading his book, The Myth of Normal, and I'm really, really inspired by what he says around our emotional bodies and trauma and how it impacts our health. I think that his work is phenomenal and I just love listening to his voice. So I'm just like soaking up everything that he's sharing at the moment. And I have other inspirations when it comes more to the nutrition side. I'm inspired by Mark Hyman's work, by the Blue Zone, Stan Butner. Those are people that I follow and that I'm inspired by. People who take a really holistic approach to health and who aren't, into the calorie counting and
Yeah.
measuring those kind of things.
Yeah, and also people who have actually watched the generations grow
Mhm.
and who have seen patterns and be like, how are these people living so healthy so long,
Mhm.
not counting any calories, not even knowing what calories are? Also,
Exactly.
like we visited a blue zone once in Greece, in Ikaria.
Oh.
And because I wanted to find out, like, why are these people so happy and so healthy? And why do they live so much longer than anyone else? Like, speaking to the older people there, their key is being social, having family. And then what I thought was really key is that they said they're not losing a sense of purpose when they get older. They
Mhm.
all still have something to do. And if it's just waking up and getting the apples from the tree, and it takes them 30 minutes a day, but that's their purpose. That's something they have to do each day. Once you lose your purpose, you're getting older. Once you start just sitting down, like looking into the TV all day, not knowing what to do with yourself, it's like the worst thing. And also in these places, what I thought was so beautiful is that the older the people got, the more they were admired because they were the people that were full of wisdom. The older you get, the more you're pushed aside. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
I don't want to hang out with these old people.
Yeah.
Why are there so many old people here? It's just like so wrong. Like you can learn so much from elderly people. And I think that's something that we really have to understand. And I think older people have to be much more accepted in today's world than they are today. And it was so funny because we told them, we were like, yeah, in Germany, basically, when you're like 65, you retire. And they were like, what? When you're 65? Like, we are, like, they said, with 60, no way you retire. 70, no way you retire. 80, you can think about retiring. And 90, you are allowed to retire. That's like
Wow.
their mindset. It was so cool. And I was sitting there, I was like, yeah, that's a great approach. That's how we should think about it. Not retiring doesn't mean to work like 12 hours a day. It just means staying active and doing something. And I think that was such a beautiful thing they shared with us. So
I love that. And I think that the reason they can do that is probably because their lifestyle allows them to still, because I think aging, the thing is like we can age, we can feel old very while we're still very young, right? Whereas these people, they're old technically, but they still feel good. And I mean, I live in a blue zone here in Costa Rica, and it's true, like community, family, the fact that they're not going to the gym, they're walking up to get their cows, they're doing all these kind of things, and they're going and picking up the eggs from the chicken, and that is actually healthy living. Yeah.
yeah, we definitely have to do much more of that. Are there any like books or podcasts that have provided you a lot of inspiration in your life?
So one of the most transformative books that I read, and this was very early on in my journey, so maybe that's why it was so transformative, but it was The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan that opened my eyes to the food industry and what I was eating. And then I've read a lot of the Mark Hyman books have been really helpful to me. And right now I'm more interested, well, it's not that I'm more interested, but I'm diving deeper into understanding the relationship between our experiences in life and trauma and gut health. And so now I'm reading Gabor Mate, The Myth of Normal. So those are books also.
I'm fascinated by Gabor Mate's work as well. I already reached out to him. I was like, please, one day have an interview with me. I just want to listen and soak everything up. It's just like give it all. I'm
Yeah.
really inspired by him as well. He's done such great work, and so I think making it so understandable for everyone. What is next on your personal healing journey? What are you most excited for?
On my personal healing journey, I think, oh, wow, I don't know. Understanding more, like, diving deeper into understanding this relationship between trauma. I've had, like, just like everyone else in the world, I've had trauma, and understanding like how that has impacted me and the link to gut health. And right now I'm dealing with some gut issues, so working around that and adapting, making changes to the way I eat. And that's another thing. Like sometimes it's just like, wow, well, I'm meant to be an expert at this, but it's just like, but we change and we're always
Yeah.
learning new things, and
Oh,
we're like going into a new environment and being surrounded by different foods. Like I live in a very tropical environment, so I've adopted more of a tropical diet, but it turns out that that's not really working that well for me. And so learning more about that in our environment, how to kind of dance with our, like with the changes that we encounter, and how we can adapt our food and fitness and wellness practices in order to meet ourselves where we are.
and if there's one other person you think I should speak to get a unique perspective on integrated healing, who would that be? And not Gabor Mate.
Gabor.
He's on my list.
Oh no, I was about to say him. That's so funny. Not Gabor Mate. Oh my God, he's like, I'm a big fan of his right now. And with what you said, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Who else? I think Dan of the Blue Zones, if he's not on your list, I think he would be an interesting person to speak to as well because of his holistic approach to health. I think he would be a really interesting
Yeah,
person to speak
that's
to.
a good one. I thought about him a lot, but I haven't put him on my list yet. So
Okay,
I'll definitely add him. Great.
great.
Added one more. Where can people follow you to keep up to date with all the wonderful things you're doing?
Thank you. So my website is fitbodyfreshmind.com, and I'm on Instagram as Maddy Karlsson. I am on Facebook as well as Fit Body Fresh Mind, and I'm on LinkedIn as Madeleine Karlsson. So those are kind of the places you can find me.
Well, thank you so much, Maddie. I really enjoyed this interview, and I learned so much already. And like I shared with you, I think there's tons I still have to ask you about that I'm struggling with.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure and it's been very joyful. So